There's a quiet kind of pain that never shows up on the surface. It doesn't come with bruises or screaming matches. It comes wrapped in Sunday dinners, childhood photos, and familiar voices that say they love you right after they've torn you down. That's the danger of tolerated behavior, not from strangers, but from those who claim the most sacred title in your life, family. And here's the hardest truth you'll ever have to swallow. Some of the deepest emotional wounds aren't inflicted by enemies, but by those who never had to earn your trust because they were born into your bloodline. I remember a client, mid-60s, gentle, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who lit candles for birthdays and stayed up late to make soup for relatives who forgot her own. One day she told me, "I don't think my family means harm, but I don't think they see me as a person either." That sentence never left me, because love without respect isn't love. It's emotional entitlement. And when it hides behind family ties, it becomes nearly impossible to name, let alone escape. This video isn't about disrespect from coworkers, toxic exes, or strangers on the internet. It's about the subtle, suffocating patterns that occur within the walls we call home. It's about the 5 behaviors you should never, under any circumstance, tolerate from anyone. Not your parents, not your siblings, not your children, not even the ones who raised you, fed you, or claim to only want what's best. Because what they want doesn't matter if it costs you your peace. The Stoics taught that we are not obligated to tolerate what injures the soul. That dignity is not something others give us. It's something we protect. And while culture may tell you that blood is thicker than water, the truth is peace is thicker than pressure. In this video, you will learn how to identify these behaviors, understand their psychological impact, and, most importantly, how to respond with clarity, not guilt. This isn't about cutting ties with everyone who's ever upset you. It's about reclaiming your emotional boundaries with the calm certainty of someone who finally remembers what they're worth. So if you've ever walked away from a family gathering feeling smaller, lonelier, or strangely ashamed for wanting something as simple as respect, stay with me, because this time, we're not just going to survive those dynamics. We're going to understand them. We're going to unlearn the silence. And we're going to rebuild your boundaries, one truth at a time. It always starts with a sentence that sounds almost loving. "After all I've done for you," or, "If you really cared, you wouldn't say no to me." These words don't shout, they whisper. But what they steal is not small. They rob you of your right to choose, to protect your energy, to say no without bleeding. This is emotional guilt tripping, and it is the first behavior you must never tolerate from anyone, not even family. Because what hides behind those words is not affection. It's a contract you never agreed to sign. I once worked with a woman named Teresa, in her late 50s, the backbone of a family that never thanked her. Every holiday she hosted, every emergency she solved. But one day her brother called and asked her to loan him money for the 4th time that year. When she hesitated, he said, "Wow, I guess I know where I stand now." That sentence broke her, not because of the words, but because of the weight. She told me, "It's like if I don't give, I'm a bad sister. But if I do, I disappear." And that's exactly what guilt tripping does. It erases your self-worth and replaces it with someone else's expectations. The psychology is simple, yet dangerous. Guilt is used not as a sign of mutual care, but as a lever of control. It makes you believe that setting boundaries is an act of betrayal, that saying no is selfish, that your exhaustion is less important than their comfort. But here's the truth. Guilt is only effective when we confuse kindness with obedience. And obedience is not love, it's survival. Stoicism draws a hard line here. Epictetus wrote, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." To be master of yourself means to act from reason, not from emotional blackmail. The Stoics believe that virtue lies in intention, not approval. That your job is to live rightly, not to be pleasing. When you act from guilt, you surrender your sovereignty, and that to a Stoic is the beginning of slavery. In family dynamics, guilt tripping is often normalized. Parents may say, "After everything I gave up for you," as if sacrifice was a loan you now owe for life. Siblings might use emotional leverage, like silence, withdrawal, or dramatic declarations, to extract your compliance. Even adult children may weaponize phrases like, "If you loved me, you'd let me." But love does not demand forfeiture. It respects boundaries. It understands the word no as an act of clarity, not cruelty. You'll notice something if you pay close attention. When you give to someone who truly respects you, they respond with gratitude, not guilt. But when your giving is expected, demanded, or emotionally coerced, it becomes less about connection and more about control. That's when you know you're not in a relationship. You're in a transaction. And the currency? Your peace. The most dangerous part of guilt tripping is that it disguises itself as love. It doesn't wear the mask of the villain. It wears the face of your father, your aunt, your child, people you'd never think to suspect. That's why it's so hard to name, because it doesn't look like violence. It looks like obligation. It sounds like duty, but you feel it in your body, the tightness in your chest, the hesitation in your voice, the fatigue that follows every yes you didn't want to give. That is not love. That is compliance. And compliance is the slowest form of self-abandonment. So how do you respond? Not with anger, not with apologies, but with calm clarity. The next time someone says, "If you love me, you would," you simply say, "I love you." And that's exactly why I need to be honest. You don't justify. You don't argue. You state your truth and let the silence do the rest. Because people who use guilt as currency will always panic when you stop playing the game. Let them. Over time, you'll notice something else. The guilt you once felt will start to lose its grip, because guilt only grows in the shadows when you act out of fear. But when you choose honesty over appeasement, the fog begins to lift. You reclaim your time, your dignity, your voice. You are not a bad daughter, son, sibling, or parent for needing space. You are not cold for protecting your boundaries. You are not selfish for choosing peace over performance. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is not loving you. They are managing you. And that's not a relationship. That's control in costume. Guilt should never be the reason you say yes. And love should never demand your silence. The people who truly care for you will not punish your boundaries. They will adjust. They will ask questions. They will listen, even if it's uncomfortable. And if they don't, walk away with grace. Because someone who confuses guilt with love will never recognize your no as sacred. You do not owe anyone access to your soul just because you share a family tree. Your boundaries are not up for debate. Your peace is not a negotiation. And your worth is not defined by how much you can endure without collapsing. You were not born to be guilted into servitude. You were born to choose, with clarity and courage, what deserves your energy. And anything that threatens that sovereignty must go. It doesn't always start with a slammed door or a raised voice. Sometimes it begins with a spare key. A relative lets themselves into your home just to drop something off. A parent opens your mail because they were curious. A sibling checks your phone when you leave the room, just making sure you're okay. And when you finally speak up, they say the same thing. "I was only trying to help." That's the mask this next behavior wears. Care. But what it truly is control without consent. This is boundary invasion, and it often hides behind the softest gestures. A mother who insists on knowing every detail of your relationships. An uncle who comments on your spending habits as if your paycheck belonged to him. A partner who checks your location just to feel safe. These acts don't scream abuse. but they chip away at your autonomy, one quiet breach at a time, and over weeks, months, or years, you start to forget where your life ends and theirs begins. I once worked with a man in his 40s. Let's call him Daniel. He lived alone, single, independent. His mother had a key to his apartment for emergencies only, but she used it weekly, unannounced. She'd leave food in his fridge, rearrange his shelves, even once threw out a gift from his ex, claiming it brought bad energy. When Daniel confronted her, she looked genuinely hurt and said, "I'm your mother. How could you speak to me like this?" He felt ashamed, not because he was wrong, but because he had finally asked for a boundary he should never have had to explain. That's the cruelty of emotional overreach. It makes you feel guilty for needing space. It convinces you that asking for privacy is an act of rebellion. But here's the Stoic truth. Your soul, your time, your space, they are not community property. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When someone constantly invades your space, they don't just rearrange your home, they repaint your mind, and suddenly your life starts to look like someone else's version of it. The psychology behind this behavior is subtle but potent. People who grew up with enmeshment, where boundaries were blurred or non-existent, often continue that pattern without realizing it. They equate closeness with access. If they love you, they should have the right to enter, to know, to influence. But love is not surveillance, and care without consent is just a prettier version of intrusion. There's also the manipulative variant, the ones who know exactly what they're doing. They test your limits. They push a little, watch your reaction, then push again. And when you object, they say you're overreacting. They may even call you selfish, distant, cold. But notice the language. You are cold when you stop being emotionally available on demand. You are distant when you draw a line. You are selfish when you protect your energy from being siphoned off. In this digital age, boundary invasion has evolved. It's not just entering your home, it's checking your last scene, pressuring you to reply instantly, sharing private conversations under the guise of concern. There's a phrase for this, emotional trespassing, and just because it doesn't come with locks and alarms doesn't mean it's harmless. It erodes your sense of safety, your rhythm of life, your ability to breathe without explanation. So how do you respond? Not with aggression, but with precision. Boundaries don't have to come with volume. They come with clarity. You don't need to justify why you want a locked door, a private inbox, or time alone. You simply state, this is what I need to feel respected. If they protest, remember, people who love you will feel discomfort, but they won't disregard you. They may stumble, but they'll learn. Because true care doesn't push, it listens. And if they don't stop, if the key keeps turning in your lock, if the questions keep prying into your choices, if the visits keep happening without your invitation, then it's time for consequences. That doesn't mean rage, it means distance. Change the locks, limit the access, withdraw availability. Emotional access, like physical space, must be earned and maintained. When people ignore your limits, they're not seeking connection. They're seeking control. From a Stoic perspective, the stewardship of your own soul is your sacred duty. You are the gatekeeper. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That includes who gets to enter, not just your home, but your mind, your calendar, your emotional bandwidth. You do not owe unlimited access just because someone once changed your diapers, shared your childhood, or helped raise you. Respect is not retroactive. It's present tense, and it must be mutual. If you're still wondering whether your boundaries are too much, here's your answer. If they protect your peace without harming others, they are not too much. They are necessary. And anyone who tells you otherwise is revealing what they were really after. Not love, but leverage. So the next time someone steps into your space, physically, emotionally, or digitally, without your invitation, ask yourself, did they come to love me or to monitor me? Did they come to care for me or to claim me? Because if you feel smaller after they leave, it was never care, it was colonization. It usually starts with a chuckle, a half smile, a sentence delivered casually across a dinner table like, "No wonder you're still single," or "You were never the smart one in the family." Laughter follows, not yours but theirs. And when your face tightens or your tone changes, they hold up their hands and say, "Relax, I'm just joking." But here's what they'll never admit. When the joke cuts deeper than the insult, it's not humor. It's humiliation wrapped in a punchline. This is the third behavior you should never tolerate: disrespect disguised as jokes. And when it comes from family, it's almost always excused. That's just how your uncle talks. Don't be so sensitive. Your brother's always been like that. We're taught to laugh along, to take it, to be the one with thick skin. But here's the truth no one wants to say aloud. The people closest to you know exactly where your soft spots are. And when they mock them in public or private, they aren't teasing. They're testing the limits of what you'll allow. I remember a woman named Carol, a retired school teacher in her 70s. She told me her older brother had teased her since childhood, about her weight, her clothes, her divorce. For decades, she laughed along because that's just family. But one Thanksgiving, he looked around the table and said, "Well, at least your husband had the good sense to leave." And in that moment, something inside her cracked, not from the words alone, but from the years she spent pretending they didn't hurt. That's how disguised mockery works. It's not a single strike, it's erosion, a slow, unspoken war on your self-esteem, disguised as tradition, banter, or being real. And when you finally speak up, they say you're the problem. You can't take a joke. You're being dramatic. Stop being so emotional. This tactic is called emotional invalidation. Gaslighting's quieter cousin. It shifts the focus from their cruelty to your reaction, so you end up questioning yourself instead of holding them accountable. But let's pause here. The Stoics were not humorless. They valued wit, brevity, clarity, but they also taught that words are tools, not weapons. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Let your words be few and well chosen." A wise person does not harm with their tongue and hide behind sarcasm. They speak with intention, with honor, with care. Humor in its truest form invites people in. It softens pain, builds bridges, creates shared understanding. But when someone uses humor to spotlight your insecurities, to mock your pain, or to cut into your dignity, it stops being connection. It becomes covert domination, a way of saying, "I know what wounds you, and I'll dress it up in laughter so you can't fight back without looking weak." And let's be honest, this is especially common in families where vulnerability is seen as weakness, where emotions were never named, only shamed, where teasing was the only language of affection anyone knew. But just because it's common doesn't mean it's acceptable. You are not ungrateful for asking your pain to be taken seriously. You are not too sensitive for needing kindness. And you are not broken for flinching when someone hands you cruelty wrapped in comedy. So how do you handle it? You don't over-explain. You don't raise your voice. You name it. When someone makes a joke at your expense, look them in the eye and say, "That didn't feel respectful." No anger, no sarcasm, just truth. Let the discomfort land where it belongs, with them, and if they repeat it, escalate your boundary. Leave the conversation, exit the room, withdraw your energy, not to punish, but to preserve. Over time, those who care will adjust. They will feel the distance and ask why. And if they truly value you, they will change the way they speak to you. But if they don't, if they keep wrapping daggers in jokes and calling it family, that's your cue. You don't need to keep sitting at tables where your dignity is on the menu. The Stoics taught that character is revealed in how we speak when we have power. And nothing gives a person more subtle power than knowing your wounds. So pay attention. Are their jokes making you laugh or making you shrink? Because here's the truth. If the joke only goes one way, it's not funny. It's a form of control wearing a crooked smile. You're allowed to step away, to stop laughing, to stop playing the part of the good sport. You're not here to make others comfortable with your pain. You're here to protect the parts of you that still remember what respect feels like. Some people will mock you and call it love. Some will humiliate you and call it honesty. But you have the right, the sovereign right to say, that's not funny, that's not love, that's not who I am. And the moment you stop laughing at what hurts is the moment you start healing for real. There's a subtle kind of exhaustion that creeps in, not from work or crisis or heartbreak, but from being everyone's emotional power source. It's when your phone never stops buzzing, not because you're needed, but because you're expected. When family assumes you'll always show up, always say yes, always be available, without once asking how you're actually doing. This is the fourth behavior you should never tolerate: entitlement to your energy. It often sounds like love. You're the strong one in the family. You always know what to do. We couldn't get through this without you. But listen closely, because behind the praise is a quiet expectation. You don't get to rest. You don't get to decline. Your availability isn't kindness anymore. It's currency. And when you stop offering it, the love turns cold. I once worked with a man named Elias in his early 50s. He was the fixer of the family. He handled hospital bills, managed funerals, lent money, and kept secrets because everyone else was too emotional. He told me, I don't even think they see me as a person anymore. I'm just the reliable one. And when he finally said no, once, his sister called him selfish. After 30 years of sacrificing, one boundary erased a lifetime of service. That's when he realized he was never loved for who he was, only for what he gave. And that's the wound at the center of this behavior. When people feel entitled to your energy, they stop seeing you as a whole being. You become a function, a utility, a solution. Your time is taken without gratitude. Your silence is seen as offense. Your no is heard as betrayal. And slowly you begin to disappear inside the role they've carved out for you. The Stoics warned us about this. Seneca wrote, "No man can live a life that is his own if he is constantly available to others." Your time, your inner state, is yours to manage, not to surrender on demand. The wise person knows when to serve and when to step back, because service without choice is not virtue, it's servitude. Let's be clear, being generous is not the problem. The problem is when generosity becomes an obligation. When it's not asked for, it's assumed. When people don't thank you anymore, they just notice when you're not there. That's when your energy is no longer a gift. It's a given. And no one, not even those you love most, should be allowed to drain you without consent. This is even more dangerous in families where roles are assigned early. You're the dependable one, the peacemaker, the one who never causes trouble. These labels seem flattering until you realize they're cages, because once you try to evolve, to rest, to say, I can't today, those same people feel betrayed. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you broke the contract they wrote for you without your permission. So how do you respond? First, you reclaim your humanity. You remind yourself and others that you are not a bottomless well of solutions. You are not the family therapist, the ATM, the emotional sponge. You are allowed to be unavailable. You are allowed to rest without apology. Then you draw what the Stoics call disciplines of action. You decide when, how, and to whom your energy goes. You create systems, delayed responses, days off, space for solitude. Not to punish others, but to honor your own life force. Because when your energy is constantly extracted, your peace becomes a casualty. And yes, some people will react. They'll guilt you. You've changed. You don't care like you used to. Let them speak. Their discomfort is not your directive. Your clarity is not cruelty. You are simply choosing not to be devoured by expectations that were never yours to carry. You'll know your boundaries are working when your nervous system finally exhales. When you stop flinching at every request. When you realize you don't owe an immediate response to every call, every crisis, every problem someone else neglected to plan for. You are not the emergency exit for everyone's dysfunction. From a Stoic view, protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's strategic. It allows you to serve when it matters, fully, freely, without resentment. And that's the difference between duty and depletion. So the next time someone assumes you'll show up, handle it, clean it, pay for it, solve it, pause. Ask yourself, is this coming from connection or consumption? Because if you leave every interaction feeling drained, small, and strangely invisible, that's not love. That's labor. You were not born to be everyone's power source. You were born to be sovereign. Let no one treat your presence like a service they're entitled to. Let them miss you. Let them learn how to carry their own weight, because the moment you stop over-functioning for others is the moment you finally begin functioning for yourself. It often comes wrapped in tradition, in generational tones, in voices that carry authority simply because they're older. You're overreacting. We never talked about these things back then. You're too sensitive. Stop making everything a big deal. When elders gaslight you, it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like disappointment cloaked in parental wisdom. But make no mistake, this is the fifth behavior you must never tolerate. Gaslighting masked as generational concern. It's especially subtle because it's often unintentional. Your father doesn't scream at you, he scoffs. Your mother doesn't correct you. She quietly rewrites the story to make herself look more loving than she ever acted. Your grandparents don't deny your pain. They simply pretend it never happened. And when you bring it up, you hear, "That's not how I remember it." Or worse, "You've always been dramatic." I remember a client named Rhea, in her early 40s, who had always felt uneasy around her mother. Nothing overtly abusive, just a constant undertone that her feelings were too much. When she finally opened up about how her childhood affected her, her mother replied, "You always had a flair for exaggeration. You made things harder than they were." Rhea told me that hurt more than any punishment because it made her doubt her memory. And that's exactly what gaslighting does. It makes you question your version of reality until you silence yourself to keep the peace. The Stoics warned against this, though they didn't use the term. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. But let them do it with reason, not denial." Gaslighting doesn't offer reason. It offers erasure. It dismisses pain, rewrites the past, and insists that your emotions are the problem, not the behavior that caused them. What makes this behavior particularly corrosive is the power dynamic. In many cultures, elders are placed on pedestals. Questioning them feels like betrayal. Drawing boundaries feels like disrespect. But respect is not compliance, and age is not a free pass to distort truth. You can honor someone's role in your life without surrendering your right to clarity. Gaslighting by elders often thrives in silence. The "we don't talk about that" culture, the family business stays in the family rule, the pressure to smile through harm, to attend gatherings with people who still haven't apologized, to pretend nothing ever happened because it's been so long. But pain doesn't expire, and silence doesn't erase the scar. It deepens it. The psychological damage is real. Repeated gaslighting rewires your brain to doubt your instincts. You hesitate before telling your story. You soften your truth to protect their ego. You find yourself defending their actions to others, even while hurting. That's not reconciliation. That's conditioning, and it's the slow death of your authentic self. So how do you respond? First, validate your own experience. Just because someone older than you doesn't acknowledge your truth doesn't make it any less valid. You were there. You remember. And even if your memory is imperfect, your pain is not imaginary. Your body doesn't lie. Then create emotional distance, if not physical, then psychological. You don't owe anyone unrestricted access to your inner world just because they share your bloodline. Share less. React less. Expect less. Not out of spite, but self-preservation. Because trying to get acknowledgement from someone committed to denial is like searching for your reflection in broken glass. From a Stoic lens, this is where the discipline of perception becomes crucial. Epictetus taught that we must protect our impressions, what we choose to accept as true. Just because someone rejects your story doesn't mean you have to abandon it. Their version of the past doesn't overwrite yours. And if they keep denying, if they twist every conversation, minimize every hurt, laugh off every serious attempt at honesty, then you stop engaging. You stop explaining. You stop hoping for the apology that will never come. That is not weakness. That is strength disguised as silence. Here's the truth. Emotional gaslighting from elders is not about wisdom. It's about control. It's a refusal to be accountable, repackaged as experience. But you do not need their validation to begin healing. You need your own permission to grieve what was lost, to name what was real, to stop shrinking your truth to fit someone else's comfort zone. You are allowed to remember what happened even if they don't. You are allowed to protect your peace even if they call it rebellion. And you are allowed to walk away from conversations that keep trying to convince you that your pain was a figment of your imagination. Let them rewrite the story if they must, but you write the ending on your terms, with your voice, and this time, let the truth be louder than their denial. By now you may feel a strange blend of relief and grief. Relief, because finally someone named what you've quietly endured for years. Grief, because now that it's named, you can't unknow it. You see it in every unspoken rule, every guilt-laced request, every joke that was never funny. And perhaps for the first time, you realize it wasn't love, not in the form you needed, not in the shape your soul could grow in. But here's what I want you to remember. Recognition is not destruction, it's liberation. Calling out harmful patterns in your family doesn't mean you're ungrateful, cold, or disloyal. It means you've chosen to stop bleeding quietly. It means you've chosen to protect your inner peace with the same loyalty you once gave to others. Now, finally turned inward. The Stoics taught us that we cannot control the actions of others, only our responses. And sometimes the most powerful response isn't confrontation, it's redirection. It's choosing when to speak and when to withdraw. It's seeing the patterns, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because you're no longer reacting to the storm, you're stepping out of it. And when you do, you might find silence, distance, discomfort, even rejection. But none of these things are proof you were wrong. They are proof that the system only worked when you were compliant. When you stop playing your assigned role, the fixer, the listener, the always available one, the whole performance starts to shake. That's not your failure. That's their reckoning. Let's be honest, it's hard to rewrite emotional history, especially when it's carved into bloodlines and family photos. But Stoicism doesn't ask you to erase the past. It asks you to examine it, own it, and act wisely in the present. It asks you to become sovereign over what you allow, without apology. And sovereignty doesn't mean building walls around your heart. It means building doors, with locks, and choosing who gets to come in, how far, and for how long. Not everyone deserves front-row access to your inner life. Not even those who helped build the house. So what does this mean in practice? It means you stop saying yes when your body says no. You stop laughing at jokes that humiliate you. You stop explaining to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop bleeding emotionally to maintain peace that was never mutual. It means you start observing instead of absorbing. You listen to how people speak to you when you set limits. You pay attention to how they respond when you take space. You start measuring love not by how long someone's been around, but by how they treat your soul when it asks for rest. And above all, it means this. You reclaim your narrative. You are not the fragile one. You are not the overreactor. You are not the problem. You are the one who finally said, enough. And that is not rebellion. That is rebirth. Marcus Aurelius once said, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And no thought is more powerful than this. You are allowed to live free from emotional obligation disguised as love. So let the past stay where it is, not forgotten, but reframed. Let the people who refuse to grow shrink into the background. Let your peace become louder than their expectations. And let your boundaries speak for you when your voice is tired. Because from this moment on, you don't just tolerate less, you choose better. And in that choosing, you don't lose your family, you find yourself. If something in this video made your chest tighten or your eyes sting, pause, breathe. That's not weakness. That's your body remembering the parts of you that were never fully protected. That's your intuition, finally being heard again after years of being talked over by guilt, silence, and expectation. And this time, I hope you don't ignore it. Maybe you've tolerated too much because you were raised to be polite, or loyal, or easy to be around. Maybe you kept the peace at the cost of your own clarity. Maybe you still do. But here's the truth no one told us growing up. Peace that demands your silence isn't peace. It's performance. And you were not born to perform for the comfort of others. You were born to stand quietly, unapologetically, in the truth of who you are, even when others squirm in its presence. So now I want to hear from you. What's one behavior from this video that hit closest to home? Which one did you justify for years just because it came from someone you love? And what's one boundary, just one, you're ready to reclaim, starting today? Drop it in the comments. Speak it into the world. Because your voice, no matter how shaken, might be the mirror someone else needs to see themselves clearly. And if you're ready to take this journey deeper, if you're wondering not just what to avoid, but how to rebuild from the inside out, then the next video is your next step. In it, we'll explore 7 silent habits Stoics use to guard their soul. These aren't loud declarations or confrontational stances. They are quiet shifts in thought, in posture, in presence that protect your peace like armor, not made of steel, but of stillness. Because the strongest people don't always shout. Sometimes they just stop explaining. Click on it now. You've done the hard part, recognizing the truth. Now let's walk together towards something lighter, wiser, and finally yours.